Long ago, monsters ruled the continent with overwhelming power. At the center of it all stood the demon king Satan, alongside his 4 terrifying generals. One by one, he sent them across the surrounding islands, ordering them to crush the human armies and claim every land in his name. And for a time, nothing could stop them. The demon king's forces swept through the continent, leaving humanity on the brink of destruction. But just when all hope seemed lost, a hero finally appeared. Together with his companions, he launched a counterattack against the demon king's army in the west. After an intense battle, they defeated the general Lucifer and reclaimed the western lands for humanity. From there, the heroes' group continued their campaign, fighting through the remaining generals and slowly taking back every island that had fallen under Satan's control. Eventually, the final battle began on the central island, the stronghold of the demon king himself. A massive war erupted between humans and monsters. While the hero's companions fought against Satan's generals, the hero confronted the demon king directly. After a brutal clash, the hero finally defeated Satan, and the human army crushed what remained of the monster forces. Badly weakened, Satan retreated into the sky and warned humanity that he would one day return to conquer the continent of Asila once again. Moments later, a giant black hole opened in the heavens, and Satan escaped into it with one of his loyal generals following close behind. Believing the war was finally over, humanity celebrated its victory. But Satan soon realized he had been transported to a completely different world. He and his general, Shil, had transformed into humans and arrived in a strange land with no magic, no monsters, and no trace of the world they once knew. Confused and weakened, Satan told Shil they first needed to find a safe place to recover. As they wandered through the streets, both of them were stunned by everything around them. Towering buildings, bright city lights, speeding cars, and advanced technology filled the city. It was unlike anything they had ever seen before. Shil suddenly noticed that Satan no longer looked like the terrifying demon king. Under the city lights, he now appeared to be nothing more than a young human boy. Satan was equally shocked when he saw that Shil had become an ordinary man in his 30s. Before they could fully process what happened, 2 police officers approached them because of their strange appearance. Shil immediately exploded in anger, shouting, "How dare you speak to us like that, human?" But the officers couldn't understand a word they were saying and assumed the 2 were just foreigners in trouble. One officer calmly asked if they spoke Japanese and whether they needed help. Realizing nobody could understand them only made Shil angrier. But Satan stopped him and warned him not to waste their remaining magic before they understood this new world. Meanwhile, the officers reported finding 2 suspiciously dressed men with minor injuries. Satan's attention quickly shifted to the police car nearby. Completely fascinated, he stared at it and told Shil that the strange vehicle moved without horses, wondering if it was powered by some unknown form of magic. The officers then asked them to come to the police station, but the moment one officer touched Shil, he snapped again and shoved the man away, proudly declaring himself as General Shil of the Demon King's army. Furious, Shil tried to use his magic to destroy the officer on the spot, but nothing happened. His powers were practically gone. The situation instantly became awkward, and the officers simply forced the 2 into the car and took them to the station. There, the officers gave them food while trying to question them. Satan secretly used his remaining abilities to analyze the food, and later used hypnotic magic on one of the officers to gather information about this unfamiliar world. After learning everything he could, Satan went to see Shil, who was busy eating in the next room, and explained what he had discovered. They were now on a world called Earth, in a country named Japan, specifically in its capital city Tokyo. Even more shocking was the fact that magic didn't exist here at all. In this world, humans considered magic nothing more than fantasy. After leaving the police station, the 2 finally understood why they had transformed into humans. Without magic in this world, their original forms couldn't be maintained. Satan then revealed that he had managed to preserve a small amount of magic before arriving here, and he asked Shil if he had been able to do the same. Shil tried using his magic once again, and once again, absolutely nothing happened. Before he could embarrass himself any further, a taxi suddenly stopped in front of them after he raised his hand. Completely confused, Shil asked Satan what just happened, and Satan confidently claimed that Shil must have unlocked some strange new magic capable of summoning vehicles. Realizing they had no way of returning home anytime soon, Satan decided they needed to adapt to human society and live by its rules until they could recover their magic. Their first step was creating new identities. Using hypnotic magic on a clerk at the civil registry office, Satan managed to obtain birth certificates and identification cards for both of them. Afterward, they opened a bank account and deposited the money Satan had secretly stolen from the police officer earlier. Next, they searched for a place to stay. At the real estate office, the agent found their behavior incredibly suspicious, but eventually introduced them to a cheap apartment owned by someone equally strange. When they arrived, the landlady warmly greeted them and introduced herself as Sheba, explaining that she lived right next door. Later that night, while discussing their future plans, Satan suddenly collapsed from exhaustion and lost consciousness. An ambulance rushed him to the hospital, where doctors explained that he had fainted due to severe weakness and lack of proper nutrition. But what shocked Satan even more was the hospital bill. Just a single injection cost nearly an entire month's rent. At that moment, he realized something terrifying: surviving in this world required money. A lot of it. So the former Demon King got a part-time job at a fast food restaurant, while Shill stayed home managing their daily life like a full-time housekeeper. Over time, Satan adapted surprisingly well to human society, now going by the name Mao, while Shill began using the name Ashia. One day, Ashia angrily scolded Mao for wasting his paycheck on useless things, leaving them with almost no food except cucumbers and milk. Wanting no part in the argument, Mao quickly escaped on his bicycle, shouting that he was already late for work. While waiting at a traffic light in the pouring rain, Mao noticed a girl running through the storm without an umbrella. Feeling bad for her, he handed over his own umbrella before racing off to work completely soaked. At the restaurant, Mao happily started another shift as a cashier. Meanwhile, Ashia spent his day at the public library searching desperately for any clue about magic or a way back to their world. But no matter how much he searched, this world treated magic as nothing more than fiction, leaving him increasingly frustrated. Suddenly, a strong earthquake shook the city. Mao and his co-worker Chi felt it while working, though Chi was more upset about dropping fries for the 6th time that day. Mao tried cheering her up, telling her she'd improve eventually. Their manager soon entered the break room and informed them the restaurant was packed with customers. Before leaving, she reminded Chi not to spill the fries again. As the rush continued, disaster struck when the fryer suddenly broke down. Mao panicked and almost used his remaining magic to fix it instantly, but he hesitated at the last second. Their manager arrived, confirmed the fryer was dead, and temporarily shut down operations until it could be repaired. Mao felt crushed because he had set personal goals for the day and blamed himself for everything falling apart. Chi reassured him that none of it was his fault and that the fryer would be fixed soon anyway. Not long after, the manager called Mao into her office. He became nervous, convinced he was about to be blamed for the accident. Instead, she surprised him with incredible news: she wanted to promote him to a full-time employee. Overjoyed, Mao rushed home imagining how much easier their lives would become with a stable salary. But on his way back, the same girl he had helped in the rain suddenly stopped him. She revealed that she recognized his true identity and had been watching him for some time. She had even seen him attempting to use magic. Mao froze in shock before blurting out the impossible truth. "Wait, are you the hero, Amelia?" Amelia stared at him and questioned why the former Demon King was now living as an ordinary fast food worker. At that moment, Mao realized something terrifying. The hero who defeated him had also been transported to Earth. Right after Satan escaped through the portal, the hero Amelia and her companions were left staring at the collapsing battlefield, unsure what to do next. Amelia immediately declared that she would chase after him, but her companions tried to stop her, warning that they had no idea where the portal led. It could have been another world entirely. But Amelia refused to let the Demon King escape. No matter where he went, she swore she would hunt him down and finish him herself. Without hesitation, she jumped into the portal after him. Back in the present, Mao stood frozen in shock after realizing the girl before him was actually Amelia. He demanded to know why she was here, and she coldly replied that she had followed him through the portal to defeat him once and for all. Mao nervously tried to calm her down, but Amelia had no intention of listening. She pulled out a knife and told him to shut up. But instead of panicking, Mao stared at the weapon and burst out laughing. "Wait. Isn't that just a cheap kitchen knife from the market?" Amelia got annoyed and snapped back, asking what was wrong with that. Mao smirked and questioned what happened to her legendary holy sword. Amelia immediately avoided the topic and angrily told him it was none of his business. That reaction alone gave Mao the answer he needed. Grinning, he realized she couldn't use her sacred powers in this world either. Amelia fired back, reminding him that he couldn't use his magic anymore either. The tension instantly exploded, and she rushed toward him to attack. Before either of them could do anything, the police suddenly showed up and dragged both of them to the station. Meanwhile, Ashia started wondering why Mao was taking so long to get home. At the station, the officers tried questioning them about the fight. Amelia bluntly declared that she intended to defeat Mao, completely confusing the officer, who assumed they were just a couple having relationship problems. He calmly lectured Amelia, saying that even if her boyfriend upset her, threatening him with a knife wasn't the solution. Amelia looked even more irritated hearing that, and immediately denied being friends with Mao. But the officer kept misunderstanding the situation, suggesting they sit down and discuss their relationship like mature adults. Realizing there was no point arguing with someone who couldn't possibly understand the truth, Amelia stayed silent until they were finally released. As they walked home afterward, Amelia warned Mao that she wouldn't attack him tonight. But now that she knew where he lived, he should never sleep peacefully again, because one day she would kill him. Mao sighed and pointed out that she didn't sound very heroic. Amelia instantly snapped, calling him the last person qualified to judge her. Mao then casually demanded she either return his umbrella or pay him back for it. Amelia looked completely offended at the idea. Why would a hero return the Demon King's umbrella? She shot back before threatening him once again and walking away. The next morning, Amelia returned to her normal life, working at a customer service center. During break time, one of her coworkers invited her out for curry, then suggested grabbing fast food instead. The moment Amelia realized it was the same restaurant where Mao worked, her entire expression changed, and she immediately rejected the idea, insisting they eat literally anywhere else. Before they could continue the conversation, new work came in and ruined their lunch plans entirely. After finishing her shift later that day, Amelia returned home with groceries and relaxed in her apartment. Compared to Mao's miserable lifestyle, Amelia was living comfortably. Her apartment was clean and elegant, and while Mao survived on cucumbers and tofu, Amelia enjoyed proper meals like chicken and rice. Meanwhile, Mao and Ashia were quietly eating dinner when someone suddenly knocked on the door. Ashia assumed it was probably a newspaper salesman, but Mao reminded him they were way too broke to afford subscriptions anyway. Ashia cautiously approached the door, only to hear a familiar voice from outside. Amelia loudly mocked him for forgetting his manners despite being one of the Demon King's generals. The moment they recognized her voice, both Mao and Ashia froze in panic. Amelia demanded they open the door and face their fate. Terrified, Ashia immediately locked everything and turned to Mao, demanding an explanation. Mao awkwardly admitted that he had already run into Amelia the previous day, but forgot to mention it. He quickly apologized and explained everything that had happened. Outside the apartment, Amelia kept screaming and threatening to break the door down if they didn't let her in. Meanwhile, Mao and Ashia calmly ignored her. Mao reminded Ashia that Amelia had lost her powers just like they had. Shock. Ashia asked if the hero truly couldn't use any holy power in this world, and Mao confirmed it with confidence before telling him to stop panicking and open the door. The moment Amelia stepped inside, she immediately mocked their tiny apartment, pointing out how thin the walls were and how anyone outside could hear every word they said. Mao sarcastically acted offended while Ashia explained that survival mattered more than luxury right now. Then Amelia noticed their dinner and stared at it in disbelief. "This is what you eat?" she asked. Mao proudly nodded and praised Ashia's cooking skills, making Amelia even more irritated. She couldn't believe she had chased the terrifying Demon King across worlds only to find him living in poverty and eating cheap food in a rundown apartment. Mao then asked about the rest of her companions. Amelia angrily told him to shut up before revealing that the high priest had tried to follow her through the portal, but it closed before he could make it through. Realizing they were all trapped separately, Mao shifted the conversation toward returning home someday, but Ashia suddenly revealed their bigger goal: they planned to conquer this world instead. Amelia stared at them in disbelief and asked how Mao expected to conquer anything when he spent all day working at a fast food restaurant. But Mao explained that she completely misunderstood his plan. Becoming a full-time employee was only the beginning. First, he would climb society step by step, gain money and influence, earn the trust of people, and slowly expand his power throughout Japan. Eventually, he would dominate this world before returning to Asila. Ashia applauded the speech like it was some brilliant master plan, while Amelia looked completely exhausted by the sheer stupidity of it. In the end, she declared she had no interest in killing them tonight and decided to leave. Mao asked why she was sparing them, and Amelia admitted that using her remaining power now would leave her unable to return home. Until she found another way back to Asila, she needed to conserve her strength. Before leaving, she also revealed that in this world she now went by the name Emi. The next morning, Emi returned to work, but her coworker quickly noticed how tense she had become lately and invited her out to lunch. Emi refused, claiming she already had plans. In reality, those plans involved secretly spying on Mao and Ashia. That evening, she stood outside their apartment watching them carefully, convinced the former Demon King had to be plotting something evil behind the scenes. But instead, she overheard them casually talking while heading to the supermarket to buy groceries and daily necessities. Emi secretly followed them and was shocked to discover that Mao actually obeyed human laws and acted like a completely normal citizen. Still suspicious, she continued monitoring them day after day. Every time she followed them, she found the same thing: grocery shopping, working, paying bills, and living ordinary lives. Several days later, Emi finally decided to confront Mao directly at his workplace. She asked him to come outside so they could talk privately, but Mao acted like a professional employee and completely ignored her, politely asking what she wanted to order instead. Frustrated, Emi insisted they needed to speak immediately, but Mao refused to break character during work hours. Eventually, Emi gave up and told him she would wait for him at the same intersection where they first met after his shift ended. Mao continued pretending not to care until she finally left. Afterward, she asked Mao if that strange girl was one of the weird customers he always attracted. Mao sighed and joked that this world was full of difficult people. Chai then pointed out that he clearly knew her since they'd spoken multiple times before. Mao reluctantly admitted it before returning to work. Later, while walking home together, Chai admitted she found the situation suspicious. At the same time, Emi continued secretly watching Mao from outside the restaurant. After the shift ended, Chi brought up the recent earthquake and complained about how strong it had been. She said her entire apartment was a disaster when she got home. Mao seemed confused because the earthquake hadn't felt that severe to him. She mentioned that her classmates had reacted the same way before eventually leaving. That night, Mao finally went to meet Imai at the intersection. She immediately asked whether he planned to stay in this world forever. Mao looked confused, wondering why she suddenly cared. Emi then admitted that she had spent the last several days observing him closely. She had watched how he interacted with people, followed society's rules, and genuinely adapted to human life. Despite once being the terrifying Dark Lord, Mao now lived honestly, worked hard, and had earned the trust of his manager, co-workers, and even customers. Mao listened to Emi's observations in silence before asking what she was trying to say. Emi took a deep breath and told him to forget about Asila entirely. Instead of chasing power and conquest again, she wanted him to accept this world and live a normal life here. But Mao instantly rejected the idea. To him, returning to Asila and reclaiming his throne was still his ultimate goal. No matter how peaceful his life on Earth had become, he refused to abandon his ambitions. Before their conversation could continue, the atmosphere suddenly changed. Without warning, someone launched an attack at them from a distance. Both Mao and Emi were caught completely off guard and immediately fled toward a quieter area to avoid dragging innocent civilians into the fight. After reaching an isolated spot, Mao assumed they had escaped for the moment. Imai demanded to know what was happening, but Mao admitted he had no idea who attacked them. However, one thing was certain: the attacker wasn't using normal weapons. They were using magic. That revelation shocked Emi. Mao explained that whoever targeted them possessed an enormous amount of magical energy and clearly knew exactly who they were. Which meant only one thing: the attacker had come from Asila. Afterward, Mao headed back home. But Emi secretly followed him the entire way. When he noticed her, he immediately became suspicious and jokingly asked if she was planning to assassinate him in his sleep. Embarrassed, Emi quickly denied it. Mao then asked why she was really there, and after hesitating awkwardly, Emi admitted she had lost her wallet and couldn't afford to get home. Left with no other choice, she reluctantly asked if she could stay the night at his apartment. When they arrived, Ashiya nearly lost his mind after seeing the hero standing inside their home. Mao quickly calmed him down and explained the situation, including the mysterious magical attack they had just experienced. Despite all their history together, Mao still prepared a place for Emi to sleep and even handed her money so she could return home the next morning. Emi was visibly irritated at having to accept help from the Demon King himself, while Ashiya spent the entire time arguing with her. Eventually, everyone settled down for the night. But while the others slept, Mao began receiving strange messages connected to the recent earthquakes. The messages made little sense to him, but something about them felt deeply unsettling. The next morning, Mao and Ashiya woke up to find Emi gone, but before leaving, she had prepared breakfast for them, an actual proper meal instead of the depressing food they normally survived on. The two happily devoured it and were shocked by how good it tasted. Afterward, they noticed the apartment key lying on the floor beneath the window. Mao quickly realized what happened. Emi had locked the door from outside, then tossed the key back in through the window before leaving. Smiling to himself, Mao commented that the gesture felt strangely fitting for a hero. Curious, he asked Ashiya what he would have done in her position. Ashiya casually replied that he would have simply kept the key after locking the door. Mao laughed and told him that answer proved he could never become a proper villain. Meanwhile, Emi was at home watching the morning news when she suddenly saw a report about gunfire that had broken out in a residential district overnight. To her surprise, Mao's bicycle had been completely destroyed by bullets during the incident. The news even showed Mao and Ashiya at the scene while police searched for the bicycle's owner, believing they might be connected to the case. At the same time, Chi messaged Mao asking if they could hang out later that day. Her mother noticed Chi getting excited and reminded her to be careful, because of the strange incidents happening around the city lately. Elsewhere, Emi's coworker brought up the shooting incident at work and pointed out that it happened near Emi's apartment. Emi corrected her, saying it was still a few stations away. When her coworker later invited her out for lunch, Emi declined again, explaining that she had lost her wallet and needed to handle paperwork instead. But in the middle of work, Emi suddenly received a strange phone call. She answered professionally like always, only for an unfamiliar voice to calmly say, Looks like you've adapted well to Japanese society, hero Amelia. Emi froze instantly and demanded to know who was speaking. The mysterious caller claimed to know everything about both the hero and the Dark Lord. He then revealed something even worse: he intended to eliminate both of them. According to him, the current state of Asila was unacceptable, and he planned to create a new world. Emi immediately raised her voice, attracting confused stares from everyone nearby. Trying to stay calm, she demanded answers. The caller mocked her for running away from a simple assassination attempt and questioned why she was cooperating with the Demon King. At that moment, Emi realized the truth. The person speaking had to be connected to the Dark Realm somehow. She reminded him that all of the Demon King's generals had supposedly died protecting Ashiya, and demanded to know who he really was. The mysterious figure only replied that they would meet soon enough before abruptly hanging up. Later that day, Emi received another unexpected call, this time from the police. When she arrived at the station, she found Mao and Ashiya already there. Thanks to the destroyed bicycle, the police had tracked Mao down and wanted answers about the shooting incident. The moment Emi saw them, she exploded in frustration, yelling that somehow the hero had ended up bailing the Demon King out of trouble. Mao awkwardly admitted he didn't know who else to contact. He could have called his manager, but he didn't want to drag her into the situation. Emi immediately shouted back that instead he decided to drag her into it. Mao casually shrugged and joked that causing problems for the hero was simply part of being the Dark Lord. After leaving the station, Emi finally told Mao about the threatening call she received earlier. She warned him that someone was targeting both of them and angrily added that only she was allowed to defeat him. Mao sighed and begged her to stop saying things like that in public because people nearby were already staring at them like lunatics. Embarrassed, Emi glared at him one last time and warned him not to die to some random nobody before storming off. But her words stayed in Mao's mind. Why would someone target both the hero and the Demon King at the same time? Later, Chi returned home, changed clothes, and excitedly prepared to meet Mao like they had planned. Meanwhile, Ashiya dragged Mao to a clothing store and forced him to wear something presentable instead of his usual cheap outfit. Mao and Chi eventually met at a cafe and spent time talking together. From a distance, Ashiya secretly watched over them like an overprotective parent. But things became awkward when Emi suddenly appeared and spotted Ashiya acting suspiciously outside the cafe. She walked over and demanded to know what he was doing there. Startled, Ashiya snapped at her to mind her own business. Emi narrowed her eyes and followed his gaze until she finally noticed Mao sitting inside with Chi. Instantly suspicious, she turned toward Ashiya and demanded to know what exactly the Demon King and his general were planning with that innocent girl. Ashiya quickly explained the situation and convinced her there was nothing sinister happening. Still, after standing outside for a while, Emi got bored and decided to head into the cafe herself. The moment Mao looked up and saw Emi entering alongside Ashiya, he nearly lost his mind trying to figure out why the two of them were suddenly together. Mao instantly started panicking the moment Emi sat down at their table. Without hesitation, she looked directly at Chi and bluntly declared that Mao was evil and nothing like the kind person he pretended to be. Chi immediately got defensive and demanded to know who Emi even was to suddenly appear and say things like that about him. Emi coldly replied that she was Mao's enemy and warned Chai that staying close to him would only bring disaster into her life. Mao desperately tried calming the situation down, but neither of them listened. The argument only escalated as both girls clashed over who Mao really was. Then suddenly, the entire cafe shook violently. A massive tremor ripped through the building, and within seconds the structure began collapsing around them. Chaos erupted as debris crashed everywhere, trapping people beneath the rubble. When the dust settled, Emi and Chi found themselves trapped together. Chi immediately panicked and asked where Mao was, terrified that something had happened to him. But Emi surprisingly reassured her, insisting that Mao was definitely still alive somewhere nearby. And moments later he appeared before them. But this time, Mao was no longer human. Standing in front of Emi was the true form of the Dark Lord himself. The sudden sight completely stunned her, and she immediately demanded to know how he had transformed back. Even Mao looked confused, admitting he had no idea what happened. The moment the building collapsed, his original form had simply returned on its own. Emi instantly realized what this meant. Mao had regained his powers. For a brief moment, she believed this was finally her chance. If his magic had returned, then maybe her holy power could return too, allowing her to finally destroy the Demon King once and for all. But Mao completely shattered her expectations. Instead of attacking anyone, he calmly told Ami to protect Chai while he focused on creating a way out before the building collapsed completely. Then, using his restored demonic power, Mao unleashed overwhelming strength and began clearing away the rubble, trapping everyone inside. One after another, he opened escape routes and saved the civilians buried beneath the debris. Emi could only stare at him in disbelief. The Demon King, the same monster she once swore to destroy, was risking himself to save human lives. The earthquake left the entire city in chaos. Buildings had collapsed, streets were destroyed, and panic spread everywhere. But somehow, despite all the destruction, there were no casualties. Thanks to Mao and Emi, everyone trapped beneath the rubble had managed to escape safely. As Amai watched Mao saving people, an old memory suddenly resurfaced in her mind. Back when she was a child, she used to bring lunch to her father while he worked in the fields. She proudly watched him enjoy the meal she had prepared herself. A neighbor passing by jokingly asked if she really cooked it. And when Emi proudly said yes, the man smiled and claimed it must taste amazing because she made it with love. Everyone laughed together peacefully. But that peaceful life didn't last long. Soon after, news spread that the Dark Lord's army had conquered the southern and eastern islands. The western islands would likely be next. Emi became terrified and asked if monsters would come to their village too. Her father tried comforting her, insisting the royal army would protect everyone, but even the adults around them seemed uncertain, especially after hearing that General Lucifer himself was leading the invasion forces. Days later, the royal army finally arrived at their village. Young Imai excitedly believed they had come to save them, but when she ran to her father, his expression told a different story. The soldiers hadn't come for the village, they had come for her. Imi's father revealed a truth that shattered her entire world. Her mother had belonged to the bloodline of the Guardian Queens, descendants of heroes blessed with sacred power, which meant Imai herself was the only person capable of defeating the Dark Lord. Emi refused to accept it. Through tears, she insisted she was just his daughter and nothing more. Her father hugged her tightly and reassured her that she would always be his daughter, no matter what. But he also admitted that this was the reason he had protected and raised her all this time. Crying uncontrollably, Imai begged him to come with her. But he apologized and said he couldn't. He simply told her how much he loved her before sending her away with the royal army. That was the last time she ever saw him. Only days later, she learned the horrifying truth. Her father was dead, and their entire village had been annihilated by the Dark Army led by General Lucifer. From that moment onward, Imai devoted herself entirely to becoming stronger. Back in the present, Mao's demonic form finally disappeared, returning him to normal. He immediately checked on Chiai and felt relieved seeing she was unharmed. Shortly afterward, a police officer approached them and recognized Chai as the daughter of an officer from the Shinjuku West Police Station. Mao suddenly remembered him. That same officer had actually been the very first human he encountered after arriving in Japan. After things settled down, Mao and Emi walked together through the damaged city. Emi asked him what he planned to do next, and Mao casually replied that he was exhausted and simply wanted to go home and sleep. He then revealed something disturbing. The earthquake hadn't been natural at all. It was an attack. Emi stopped in shock and demanded to know who could possibly cause something like that in a world where using magic was so difficult. Mao admitted he didn't know the attacker's identity yet, but he was certain the enemy was nearby. However, now that Mao's powers had started returning, the enemy would likely avoid making another move for a while. Before Emi could respond, her coworker Rika suddenly called out to her from nearby, worried about her safety. Mao quietly told Emi to go reassure her friend, genuinely glad she had people in this world who cared about her. Meanwhile, Ashia finally caught up to Mao and immediately apologized for failing to notice the enemy sooner. But Mao dismissed his guilt and told him to stop worrying. They were all exhausted and needed rest first. Later that night, Rika stayed with Amai and even cooked dinner for her. At the same time, Mao and Ashia were stopped by police officers while heading home. The officers questioned them briefly and warned them to stay alert because thefts and strange incidents had been increasing throughout the city. The next morning, Emi visited Mao's apartment and returned the money he had lent her, proudly declaring they were even now. Naturally, the two immediately started arguing again. During the conversation, Emi asked about Ashia since she hadn't seen him since the disaster. Mao explained that he was fine physically, but emotionally he felt useless for not being able to help more during the attack. Mao then asked if Emi herself was alright. Instantly embarrassed, Emi snapped at him, yelling that he was still her enemy and had no right worrying about her. She turned dramatically to leave, only to trip on a broken stair and crash face first into the ground. Mao sighed in disbelief and carried her back inside while Ashia treated her injuries. But once the chaos settled, Emi finally exploded emotionally. She demanded to know what had happened to Mao. The terrifying demon king she once knew was supposed to be ruthless and selfish, yet now he saved people, worried about others, cooked meals, and somehow managed to earn everyone's trust despite living in poverty. Mao fired back with a joke about her falling down the stairs like an idiot, but this time Imai didn't yell back. Instead, she broke down crying. Through tears, she finally asked the question she had buried deep inside for years. If you're really this kind, then why did you kill my father? The room fell silent. Emi sobbed as years of pain poured out of her all at once. The Dark Lord she hated was supposed to be pure evil, yet the Mao standing before her now didn't match that image at all. For the first time, Mao quietly apologized. He admitted that back then, he never truly understood humans or the suffering his army caused. Right then, Ashia walked in with Qi, explaining that he had run into her outside and brought her over to check on Mao. But the moment Qi sensed the heavy atmosphere in the room, she awkwardly apologized for interrupting and quickly left. Not long after, their landlady Shibo arrived and informed everyone that the apartment building would undergo renovations because of the earthquake damage. She needed approval from all the tenants before work could begin. But before the conversation could continue, another tremor shook the building. At the same time, powerful figures from Asila were finally making their move. Imi's former allies crossed through a magical portal and headed straight toward Japan. Elsewhere in the city, Qi accidentally bumped into a suspicious man while walking home alone. She apologized politely, but the stranger stared at her ominously and declared that she would make a perfect sacrifice. He revealed that he had been observing her for quite some time and planned to use her despair to destroy both the hero and the Dark Lord. A nearby passerby noticed the disturbing encounter and tried stepping in to help. But suddenly, massive black wings burst from the stranger's back. The city instantly descended into chaos once again. From a distance, Mao, Imi, and Ashia sensed the disturbance and rushed toward it. The moment Mao saw the winged figure, his expression darkened. "I knew it," he muttered before shouting in disbelief. "What are you doing here, Lucifer?" Imi stared at the winged figure in complete disbelief. Lucifer was supposed to be dead. She personally remembered burning him with her sacred sword during the final battle in Asila. But Mao quickly realized the truth. Lucifer had survived because someone helped him escape the human priest Orba. And right on cue, Orba finally revealed himself. The moment Imi saw him standing beside Lucifer, her face filled with shock. A man who once fought alongside humanity had betrayed everyone and joined forces with the Dark Army. Mao immediately understood that everything happening in the city, the earthquakes, the attacks, the growing fear, had all been part of Orba's plan from the very beginning. Seeing there was no point hiding anymore, Orba calmly greeted Imi like an old acquaintance and welcomed her after such a long time apart. Imi could barely process what she was seeing. Through trembling emotions, she demanded to know why he betrayed humanity and sided with Lucifer. Before Orba could answer, Mao explained it himself. Orba never intended for either side to win. His real goal was to let the hero and the Demon King destroy each other so he could seize control of the world afterward. Orba's expression immediately changed after realizing Mao had uncovered everything. But before anyone could react further, Lucifer suddenly attacked. A powerful blast of magic struck Ashia directly, leaving him severely wounded. Then Lucifer rose into the sky and prepared another devastating attack, this time targeting Imi. A giant magic circle appeared overhead as flames rained down across the city. Mao and Emi barely managed to block the attacks with what little magic they had left, while terrified civilians ran screaming through the streets. Realizing they couldn't win head-on, Mao grabbed the injured Ashia and fled alongside Imi. Imi grew frustrated and demanded to know why they were retreating, but Mao insisted Ashia's life came first. While escaping, Imi asked the question that had been bothering her since the fight began. How was Lucifer able to use such overwhelming magic while the rest of them remained so weak? Mao finally revealed the answer. Lucifer had been feeding off humanity's negative emotions the entire time. The thefts, disasters, panic, and fear spreading across the city were all intentional. Every terrified human strengthened Lucifer further. Mao then admitted he discovered this after the building collapse. During the disaster, the fear surrounding him temporarily restored his true demonic form and gave him back his power. Lucifer became furious after hearing that Mao understood the secret yet chose not to abuse it. He demanded to know why the Demon King hadn't simply spread terror across Earth to fully restore his strength and conquer both worlds. But Mao shocked him with his answer. Over time, he had genuinely started enjoying life as a human. Lucifer looked disgusted hearing the former Demon King say something like that. Enraged, he declared that if Mao refused to spread fear himself, then Lucifer would do it in his place. Then he revealed Qi, unconscious in his grasp. Using Qi as leverage, Lucifer relentlessly pursued Mao and Emi while launching devastating magical attacks around the city. The two barely avoided being killed multiple times, and during the chaos Mao suffered a serious injury, yet he continued running without stopping. Suddenly, Orba appeared from behind and shot Mao with a gun, completely cornering them. With Lucifer in the sky and Orba blocking their escape, there seemed to be nowhere left to run. But at the last second, Mao used teleportation magic to escape with Emi and Ashia. They reappeared near Sasuzuka Station, hoping to buy time. Unfortunately, Lucifer instantly found them again. "There's no escaping me," he declared as civilians nearby screamed in terror at the sight of the monstrous figures floating above the city. Then Lucifer unleashed another attack. A massive blast of magic pierced straight through Mao's chest, blowing a giant hole through his body. Emi froze in horror. Lucifer laughed triumphantly before tossing Qi aside like trash now that she had outlived her usefulness. Emi immediately rushed forward and caught her before she hit the ground. Convinced Mao was finally dead, Lucifer turned toward Orba and proudly declared that their agreement had been fulfilled. With the Demon King gone, nothing could stop him from spreading fear and destruction across the entire world. And with that, Lucifer unleashed his magic upon the city, turning Tokyo into a nightmare filled with panic and despair. A massive structure suddenly began collapsing directly toward Emi and Chi, threatening to crush them both beneath the rubble. But just before impact, Mao appeared once again in his true form as the Dark Lord and saved them at the last second. Standing before Lucifer with his full demonic power restored, Mao smirked and sarcastically thanked him for helping him regain his original form. Emi instantly realized what Mao had done. He intentionally brought the battle into a crowded area so he could absorb the fear spreading through the civilians and restore his magic. And at that exact moment, Emi's own holy power finally awakened as well. The hero had returned. Without hesitation, Mao cast a massive barrier around the surrounding civilians to protect them from the battle while Emi charged straight toward Lucifer at full speed. An intense clash erupted between them as magic exploded across the city. Despite Emi regaining her power, Lucifer still managed to overpower her and mocked her for thinking she could continue fighting without a stable source of magic. Then suddenly, Ashia also regained his true form as one of the Demon King's generals and joined the fight. The battle split into two fronts. Ashia confronted Orba directly while Emi continued fighting Lucifer. But before the fight could drag on any longer, Mao finally stepped in seriously. The moment he unleashed the true power of the Dark Lord, the entire battlefield changed. With a single overwhelming attack, Mao completely obliterated Orba instantly. Lucifer froze in terror after witnessing the sheer difference in power between them. Mao then calmly turned toward Emi and asked what they should do with Lucifer now. Emi coldly answered that Lucifer needed to take responsibility for everything he had done to the city and its people. Mao sighed before casually adding that Lucifer should also take responsibility for making him late to work. Then, with one devastating strike, Mao launched Lucifer across the battlefield so hard that his face swelled instantly from the impact. After the chaos finally settled, Chi, who had witnessed the entire insane battle unfold, slowly looked at everyone and asked the obvious question. Okay, who exactly are you people? By then, everyone had already returned to their normal human appearances. Mao casually introduced himself as the Dark Lord from another world called Asila, while Emi revealed that she was the hero from that same world. Instead of panicking, Chi suddenly burst out laughing. She admitted she always believed stories about demons and heroes were just fantasy, yet somehow all of it turned out to be real. Naturally, Mao and Emi immediately went back to arguing like nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Lucifer finally asked what they planned to do with him now that he had lost. Emi questioned whether he was the mysterious caller who contacted her at work earlier, and Lucifer admitted that it was him. She then demanded to know how he found her location in the first place. Lucifer casually revealed that he tracked her down through the wallet she lost before. At that moment, magical energy surged nearby as Emi's allies finally arrived from Asila through the portal. They were shocked to see the entire area frozen under Mao's magical barrier, but the moment they spotted Emi alive and safe, they rushed toward her happily. Emi was equally stunned to see Emiraba and Albert standing in Japan after all this time. But their surprise quickly shifted toward Mao and Ashia after realizing the terrifying Dark Lord Satan and General Shill now looked like completely ordinary humans. Once things calmed down, Emiraba explained the current situation back in Asila. The temple had descended into madness, and Orba was far from the only traitor manipulating events behind the scenes. Afterward, Emi brought her allies back to Mao's apartment to wait and discuss everything further. Albert and Emiraba were completely speechless after seeing the humble apartment where the former Dark Lord now lived. Meanwhile, Mao, Ashia, and the defeated Lucifer remained behind in the ruined city. Then Mao made another shocking decision. Instead of leaving the destruction behind, he chose to use his magic to restore the entire city back to normal. Even Lucifer looked confused by the decision and demanded to know what had happened to the Demon King he once served. A Dark Lord should naturally spread destruction and chaos, not repair the damage afterward. Mao quietly admitted that Lucifer was right, but despite that, he restored everything anyway. Using an enormous amount of magical power, Mao repaired the city and returned it to its original state before finally heading home. Later, Albert and Emiraba urged Imai to return to Asila with them immediately. Albert admitted that Mao's behavior no longer resembled the terrifying Dark Lord they once knew. He wasn't even sure whether Satan was truly the same person anymore. Meanwhile, life somehow returned to normal once again. Mao went back to working at the restaurant alongside Chi like usual. During work, Chi quietly asked him whether he planned on returning to Asila someday. But Mao calmly replied that he couldn't return anymore even if he wanted to. Restoring the city had consumed nearly half of his remaining magical power. He then awkwardly asked Chi whether she wanted him to erase her memories of everything she witnessed. Chi immediately got angry and called him an idiot for even suggesting it. After eating out together, Mao and Ashia finally returned home late at night. The moment they stepped inside, Lucifer immediately started complaining that they took too long and left him starving. Ashia instantly lost his patience and scolded him for acting spoiled despite being allowed to stay there at all. He reminded Lucifer that Lord Mao had already shown him far more kindness than he deserved. Mao then handed Lucifer a small food container he had brought back for him. But instead of being grateful, Lucifer looked inside and complained that it wasn't grilled meat from the restaurant they visited. He even asked why they hadn't brought him something better. Ashia snapped immediately, reminding him that they had already spent a ridiculous amount of money buying him a laptop, a phone, and internet access. Lucifer grumbled that none of those things were edible, but Ashia shut him down and ordered him to at least make himself useful by researching magic and supernatural phenomena online. Depending on his results, Ashia promised he might upgrade his meals later. Meanwhile, Emi was busy working when she suddenly received an internet call from Lucifer. The moment she answered, Mao excitedly commented in the background about how incredible modern technology was. Emi nearly lost her mind after realizing the Demon King and Lucifer were casually video calling her at work. She immediately demanded to know why they contacted her there, but Mao awkwardly explained they were simply testing the internet connection. Before Emi could explode any further, Mao quickly hung up. Later that day, Mao returned to work at the restaurant as usual. She pointed out how impressive his progress had been. In less than a year, he had already been promoted to a supervisor position. Mao modestly explained that he mainly helped cover for the manager whenever she wasn't available. Chai then jokingly asked whether he could use his remaining magic to brainwash humans and rise through society faster. Right as she said that, Imai suddenly appeared out of nowhere and declared she would never allow such a thing. Chi greeted her cheerfully while Imai marched straight toward Mao and insisted they needed to discuss something important immediately. Mao casually brushed her off because he was still working, which only irritated Emi further since he was the one who called her workplace first. Chi awkwardly tried calming the two down before another argument broke out in the middle of the restaurant. Back at the apartment, Lucifer spent his time exploring the internet and searching for games to entertain himself with. During his browsing, he stumbled upon an article discussing mysterious hidden locations throughout Tokyo. At the same time, Ashia continued researching magic through books and old records. Eventually, he discovered rumors about a place where monsters supposedly existed. Unfortunately, the location was in Turkey, and the travel costs were absurdly expensive, far beyond anything they could currently afford. After Mao finally finished his shift, Emi was still waiting outside for him. Mao sighed and asked what she wanted this time, and Imai immediately confronted him about the ridiculous prank call to her workplace. Mao explained that Lucifer simply wanted to test how internet calls worked. Emi then demanded to know why Lucifer was still staying with them instead of being turned in. Mao explained that the police were actively searching for him, so keeping him hidden inside the apartment was the safest option for now. Emi looked genuinely horrified imagining 3 grown men living together inside that tiny apartment. Mao simply admitted they didn't really have another choice. He also revealed that restoring the city consumed over half of his remaining magical power, meaning returning to Asila anytime soon was practically impossible now. Hearing that, Emi smirked proudly and claimed she could return to Asila whenever she wanted. Mao immediately asked why she was still here then. Emi crossed her arms and answered without hesitation, "As the hero, it's my duty to keep watch over the Dark Lord. As long as you remain in this world, I'm staying here too." After returning home, Mao found complete chaos waiting for him. Lucifer was passed out on the floor, Ashia looked completely drained while sitting in the bathroom, and beside them was a letter from their landlady. Once Mao calmed everyone down and figured out what happened, he discovered the source of the disaster. Their landlady had simply sent them a photo of herself enjoying a vacation in Hawaii. The problem was that the picture was unbelievably bad. After recovering from that nightmare, Mao asked Lucifer whether he had actually managed to gather any useful information about magic in this world. Surprisingly, Lucifer claimed he had found several interesting leads. He showed them a list of places rumored to contain mysterious energy, including famous ancient sites like the pyramids and Stonehenge. Among the locations, one place in Japan stood out the most: a certain school rumored to have supernatural activity. Mao and Ashia went to investigate, but the moment they arrived, Mao couldn't sense any magical energy at all. Ashia suggested they might need to enter the school itself to find something hidden inside. The problem was that they were complete strangers, so sneaking in wouldn't be easy. Right then, Chi suddenly called out to Mao from inside one of the classrooms. Only then did Mao realize he had heard the school's name before and completely forgotten it was actually Chi's school. Later at work, Mao casually asked Chi about a strange rumor connected to the school, a forbidden classroom supposedly tied to supernatural events. Chi immediately recognized the story. According to the rumors, people who passed by the room at night could hear the sounds of monsters coming from inside. When Chi asked why he cared about some creepy school legend, Mao admitted it might somehow be connected to Asila and magic from his world. That same evening, Mao, Ashia, and Chai secretly snuck into the school together, with Chi guiding them through the building. She explained that the forbidden classroom had been sealed off years ago after a student entered it and mysteriously vanished without a trace. Mao found it strange how excited she seemed despite wandering through an abandoned haunted building at night. When he asked why she wasn't scared at all, she smiled and admitted she was happy simply because she could finally help him for once after everything he had done for her. Then she casually added that as long as she was with the Dark Lord, there wasn't really anything left to fear. At that moment, Lucifer suddenly called Mao with new information. According to his research, the missing student may have disappeared because a magical portal briefly opened inside the classroom years ago. Ashia was stunned that Lucifer somehow uncovered all of this through internet research alone. Suddenly, strange noises echoed through the hallway. Footsteps slowly approached them. Mao and Ashia instantly prepared for battle, assuming some kind of monster had appeared. But when the figure finally emerged from the darkness, it turned out to be Emi. She demanded to know what they were doing sneaking around the school so late at night. After Mao explained everything, he asked why she was there too. Emi proudly revealed that she saw them entering the school and followed them herself. She then announced that she would be joining the investigation from now on. But while she was talking dramatically, Mao, Ashia, and she quietly walked away without her noticing. Realizing she'd been left behind, Emi angrily sprinted through the halls searching for them while the others hid inside the biology lab. The moment Emi entered the room, she saw a human anatomy model standing in the dark and immediately mistook it for a monster. Without hesitation, she smashed it apart. Mao jumped out in horror and yelled that it was just a medical model, not an actual creature. Naturally, the two immediately started arguing again. Meanwhile, somewhere within the old building, a mysterious figure from the temple in Asila silently observed all of them from the shadows. Eventually, the group reunited and continued toward the forbidden classroom together. The building housing it was old and abandoned, with the classroom located on the third floor. As they approached, she noticed something strange. Wooden planks had been nailed over the classroom door, even though they were never there before. Ashia then realized the lock itself had already been broken and left lying on the floor. Something clearly wasn't right. Mao removed the wooden boards, and the group carefully entered the room. Inside, they discovered fresh food wrappers and leftovers scattered around, proving someone had been there recently. Right then, Lucifer called again and casually asked whether they had reached the classroom yet. Mao confirmed they had, and Lucifer immediately asked if they saw anything unusual inside, specifically a handheld gaming console. Mao looked around and spotted one lying on the floor. The moment he picked it up, Lucifer sighed in relief and admitted he must have forgotten it there. Mao instantly lost his patience. Lucifer casually revealed that he and Orba had actually stayed in that classroom for a while after first arriving in Japan, and the entire investigation had basically turned into a mission to recover his lost game console. Mao was beyond furious. After finally leaving the abandoned building, Chi briefly noticed a wrapped food item lying on the ground nearby, but the group ignored it and headed home. The following evening, Mao returned from work and found a mysterious girl standing outside his apartment. But the moment he spoke to her, she suddenly collapsed down the stairs and lost consciousness. The next morning, the mysterious girl who collapsed outside Mao's apartment returned and rang the doorbell. She politely apologized for troubling them the night before and introduced herself as Suzuno, explaining that she had just moved into the apartment next door. As a gesture of thanks, she handed Mao a gift box. Mao accepted it and introduced himself, but the moment he took the package he was shocked by how unbelievably heavy it was. Suzuno had been carrying it around effortlessly like it weighed nothing. Ashia soon joined them, introduced himself as Mao's longtime friend, and welcomed her to the building. Suzuno mentioned that she had already heard about them from the landlady, who told her she could rely on them if she ever needed help. Then Suzuno noticed Lucifer inside the apartment as well, and Mao casually introduced him too before she politely excused herself and returned to her room. Meanwhile, Emi received a magical communication from Emiraba back in Asila. To help Emi fully recover her holy power, Emiraba had secretly sent magical potions disguised as ordinary vitamins so nobody in Japan would become suspicious. She warned Emi not to take more than 2 doses a day before ending the communication. The following day, Emi once again resumed her self-appointed duty of spying on Mao from a distance, convinced he had to be plotting something suspicious eventually. While standing outside in the summer heat and constantly drinking water, she suddenly noticed something unexpected. Suzuno was inside Mao's apartment, casually spending time with Lucifer. Even stranger, Suzuno was teaching him basic household chores like drying laundry properly. Emi instantly became suspicious and convinced herself that Suzuno had to be another member of the Demon King's army. Determined to uncover the truth, Emi secretly snuck closer to the apartment and began spying on them through the doorway. Inside, Suzuno patiently taught Lucifer how to prepare instant noodles, while explaining that if he wanted to help his friends, he should at least contribute to the housework. Nearby, Ashiya was practically melting from the heat and begged Suzuno to make Lucifer actually listen for once because he never followed instructions. Suzuno then decided to return briefly to her apartment to grab ingredients so she could cook everyone a proper meal. Hearing that, Emi panicked and hurried to hide before Suzuno spotted her spying. Unfortunately, just like always, she lost her balance on the stairs and nearly fell, only for Mao to catch her at the last second. Naturally, the two immediately started arguing the moment they made eye contact. Eventually, everyone ended up inside the apartment together. Suzuno politely apologized to Emi for startling her earlier, while Emi awkwardly claimed it was just her own clumsiness. After formally introducing themselves, the group shared a meal together, though Mao and Emi still somehow managed to argue throughout dinner like usual. As days passed, Emi continued secretly watching Mao whenever she could, refusing to let her guard down around the former Dark Lord. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, Mao's manager informed him that she would be leaving for a while. Until she returned, Mao would temporarily be responsible for managing everything himself. She trusted him enough to leave the restaurant in his hands, and told him to contact her immediately if anything serious happened. That same evening, Imai went shopping at a supermarket when she was suddenly ambushed by a mysterious masked figure possessing powerful magical energy. Before the fight could escalate further, the store owner unexpectedly appeared, forcing the attacker to retreat immediately. The owner quickly brought Emi inside, helped her calm down, and contacted the police while she recovered from the sudden attack. The next day, Emi and Chi visited Mao's apartment together. The moment the door opened, Chi was shocked to see Suzuno standing there like she already belonged in the house. Inside, Suzuno was calmly preparing food for everyone, and once the meal was served, she was blown away by how delicious it was. Everyone gathered around the table, and for once the apartment actually felt peaceful. During the meal, Emi asked Suzuno whether she had found a job yet. Suzuno explained that she had experience cooking in the past, but currently she wasn't working anywhere. Still, she didn't mind taking any simple job as long as it covered her daily needs. The moment Mao heard that, he immediately suggested she work at the restaurant with them. Since Chi already worked there too, she could help train her. Chi got slightly embarrassed after being dragged into the conversation so suddenly, but she agreed anyway. Suzuno politely thanked them and said she would seriously consider it. Ashiya then pointed out another issue. Suzuno's entire wardrobe consisted of traditional Japanese clothing, and she barely owned proper shoes either. Emi looked completely stunned after realizing Suzuno genuinely wore nothing but old-fashioned outfits. Without hesitation, Emi offered to take Suzuno shopping after work so they could buy her proper modern clothes. Later that day, Mao walked Chai home like usual. Along the way, they ran into Suzuno, who was heading out to meet Emi for their shopping trip. Mao offered to escort her to the subway station, assuming she might get lost otherwise. When Suzuno finally met up with Emi, she was visibly amazed by the subway itself, staring at everything like she had never seen transportation before. Confused, Emi asked how she even managed to travel around the city before learning how to use trains. Suzuno casually answered, "I used a portal." Emi instantly froze. The moment Suzuno realized what she said, both of them stared at each other in shock. Emi immediately started yelling that Suzuno never mentioned she was from Asila too. Suzuno calmly explained that she was originally from the temple in Asila, and had come to Japan to investigate the current situation surrounding the Dark Lord. More importantly, she wanted to confirm whether the rumors were true that Hero Emilia had started cooperating with Satan. Emi immediately defended herself and insisted she only worked together with Mao once in order to save innocent people during Lucifer's attack. Then Emi suddenly remembered the masked figure from the supermarket and asked if Suzuno was the one who attacked her. Suzuno looked genuinely confused. Emi explained that another person from Asila had ambushed her and somehow managed to neutralize her sacred sword completely. Suzuno firmly denied having anything to do with the attack. Emi then demanded to know who Suzuno really was, and why someone from the temple was secretly living next door to the Demon King. Finally, Suzuno revealed the truth. Her real name was Crestia, and she was actually the commander of the temple's investigation committee. Then, in a serious tone, she asked Emi a direct question. "Do you still have the will to kill the Dark Lord?" But before the conversation could go further, Emi glanced at the time and immediately panicked about being late for work. She cut the discussion short and promised they could continue talking afterward. As they spent more time together around the city, Suzuno became fascinated by modern technology and everyday life in Japan. Emi, meanwhile, couldn't stop being surprised by Suzuno's reactions to completely normal things. At one point, the two sat together at a cafe, where Emi asked how Suzuno had learned so much about Japanese culture so quickly. Suzuno proudly admitted that she learned almost everything from historical drama TV shows. Eventually, the conversation returned to the real issue. Emi questioned why the commander of the temple investigation committee chose to live directly beside the Dark Lord. Suzuno explained that she was searching for clues connected to Orba. Since the only solid lead they had was Mao's location, she stayed nearby to observe him, knowing the hero would eventually appear too. Emi then asked why Suzuno wanted to meet her specifically. Suzuno explained that Orba acted against the temple's orders and betrayed everyone. She hoped Emi would join forces with her, so they could defeat the Dark Lord together and finally return to Asila. But Emi rejected the offer immediately. After everything that happened with Orba and Lucifer, she no longer trusted the temple so easily. She reminded Suzuno that innocent people nearly died because of their betrayal, and even Emiraba and Albert witnessed it themselves. Despite their disagreement, the two continued spending time together afterward. Imai even helped Suzuno adapt to modern life by giving her magazines about fashion and society, so she could blend into Japan more naturally. After finishing her conversation with Suzuno, Imai headed back to work like usual. Meanwhile, things at Mao's restaurant were becoming a disaster. A brand new rival restaurant had opened directly across the street, and almost all the customers were flocking there instead. Compared to the crowded competitor, Mao's restaurant looked completely deserted. The manager warned Mao that the situation was serious. If they failed to recover their customer base and improve sales soon, the company might transfer them to one of the restaurant's freezing remote branches. In other words, this was a battle for survival. As the pressure kept building, a mysterious man suddenly entered the restaurant and asked to speak with the manager. Mao politely explained that she wasn't there today, but offered to help instead. The man studied Mao carefully before asking if he was the famous employee everyone had been talking about lately. He calmly commented that Mao seemed like a very extraordinary person. Mao awkwardly thanked him for the compliment. Then the man introduced himself. To Mao's surprise, he turned out to be the owner of the rival restaurant, stealing all their customers. Elsewhere, Amy and Rika finished work and left the office together. Outside, they unexpectedly ran into Suzuno, who had apparently taken Emi's advice seriously and gone shopping for modern clothes. Suzuno proudly showed off her new outfit and even revealed the smartphone she had bought. Watching someone from another world get excited over modern technology still felt surreal to Emi. Rika then asked who Suzuno was, and Emi casually introduced her as a new friend. Not long after, Suzuno suggested they all go eat at Mao's restaurant together. Rika loved the idea immediately and agreed without hesitation. Emi, unfortunately, had no choice but to go along with them. Meanwhile, across the street from the rival restaurant, Mao and Chi stood there watching in frustration as massive crowds continued pouring into the competition's building. Their own restaurant, on the other hand, was almost completely empty. The difference was honestly painful to look at. Emi, Rika, and Suzuno eventually arrived at Mao's restaurant, only to discover the place was completely empty. Not a single customer was inside. Since there was nothing to eat there, Rika happily dragged them across the street to the rival restaurant instead, where the atmosphere was completely packed and lively. As they sat together eating, Rika casually brought up Mao and asked Emi what kind of person he really was. Emi hesitated for a moment. In her mind, the answer was simple: she was the hero, and Mao was the Dark Lord. But obviously, she couldn't say that out loud. Meanwhile, Suzuno admitted that all she really knew about Mao was that he had practically dragged her into settling into her new home. Emi immediately added that the only thing she personally felt toward Mao was the desire to kill him as quickly as possible. Rika laughed awkwardly and told Emi to stop exaggerating because Mao was obviously still her friend somehow. The conversation continued, with Emi insulting Mao more and more as usual, until she accidentally went too far. Unfortunately for her, Ashiya happened to be nearby and overheard everything. The moment he heard someone insulting Lord Mao, he immediately snapped and yelled at Emi from behind. Emi jumped in surprise and demanded to know what he was doing there. Back at Mao's restaurant, Mao stood near the entrance staring across the street at the rival business while anxiously waiting for Ashiya to return. A flashback revealed the truth. Mao had secretly sent Ashiya to buy fried chicken from the competitor so they could analyze the recipe and figure out why customers loved it so much. Back in the present, Mao was growing increasingly stressed. She noticed how nervous he looked and pointed out that there wasn't even any work left to do, because they had already cleaned the restaurant completely. Mao looked around at the other employees and realized morale had completely collapsed. Not a single customer had entered all day, even though the streets outside were packed with festival crowds. She suggested going outside and loudly advertising promotions to attract people inside. Mao thought it was a good idea but wanted to wait until Ashiya returned first. At the same time, he desperately tried thinking of strategies to steal customers back from the rival restaurant, but couldn't come up with anything useful. Seeing how frustrated he looked, the staff tried reassuring him that he didn't need to shoulder everything just because he was acting manager. Mao finally calmed down a little and awkwardly told everyone to just clean the windows for now. Meanwhile, at the rival restaurant, Emi continued interrogating Ashiya about why he was there. Ashiya admitted he originally intended to stay hidden the entire time, but hearing Emi insult Lord Mao so shamelessly made him lose control. Ahmed brushed that aside immediately and admitted she actually needed his help with something. Ashiya coldly replied that he had absolutely no reason to help her. But Emi then revealed she already knew why he came to the restaurant in the first place. He was obviously investigating the food ingredients for Mao. She offered to buy him whatever he wanted if he cooperated. The deal instantly worked. Ashiya calmly sat down with them while Rika looked completely confused by the entire situation. She asked if they were all secretly friends too, causing Ashiya to aggressively deny it before quickly apologizing for raising his voice. After introducing himself properly, Rika suddenly realized he was Suzuno's neighbor. She warmly introduced herself as Emi's coworker, and then casually asked if Ashiya was the one living together with Mao. Ashiya looked surprised that she even knew Mao's name. Rika admitted she didn't know him personally, but was honestly curious about him. Then she innocently asked why Emi always acted like she was trying to keep every girl away from Mao. Ashiya paused for a moment, before suddenly deciding to create the most ridiculous story imaginable. According to him, he and Mao used to run a company together. Emi and Suzuno immediately stared at him in disbelief, while Rika listened with complete seriousness. Ashiya continued explaining that their business specialized in real estate, employment agencies, and construction projects. The company itself was apparently called Mao. Rika became even more shocked and innocently asked if Emi used to work in construction too. Without hesitation, Ashiya kept going. He claimed Emi worked for a rival company and constantly competed against Mao for contracts. Since Emi supposedly kept winning every deal, Mao's company eventually went bankrupt. After losing everything, Mao and Ashiya moved to Suzuka and tried rebuilding their lives. Then, according to Ashiya's completely fake story, Emi later reunited with them out of guilt and pity, which was why she kept visiting their apartment all the time. After hearing Ashiya's ridiculous story, Rika finally thought she understood the strange relationship between Mao and Emi. Meanwhile, Ashiya found himself thinking more seriously about Mao's ambitions. He realized that even after losing everything and ending up in another world, Mao had never abandoned his dream of becoming a successful ruler. Only now, instead of conquering nations, he was mastering business management. To Ashiya, the proof was obvious. In less than a year, Mao had already climbed from a part-time worker to supervisor at the restaurant. Rika became genuinely interested after hearing all of this. Since her own family owned a massive company and several factories, she figured someone as hardworking as Mao could become useful someday. Excited, she suggested they go visit him immediately. Emi looked completely annoyed by the idea, but after paying the bill, she reluctantly followed everyone to Mao's restaurant anyway. When they arrived, Emi ended up interacting with the acting manager at the register and instantly thought the guy seemed incredibly weird. Meanwhile, Ashiya finally returned to Mao and reported everything he learned from spying on the rival restaurant. Afterward, he grabbed food for Lucifer and headed home. Inside the restaurant, Rika, Emi, and Suzuno sat down at a table while Mao walked over to take their order. The moment Rika saw him up close, she admitted he was completely different from what she expected. Then she immediately started teasing him, joking that ever since he became supervisor, the restaurant had turned into a ghost town. Mao instantly got defensive and snapped at her for insulting the business. Rika smugly reminded him that customers shouldn't be talked to like that and threatened to complain to management. Mao sighed and replied that customers still needed to follow basic rules before finally asking who she even was. Rika formally introduced herself as Emi's coworker and explained that she had heard many different stories about him from Ashiya, Emi, and Suzuno. Mao looked genuinely confused that Ashiya had apparently been talking about him too. Curious, he asked what exactly everyone had said. Rika simply replied that every person described him differently, which made her want to see the truth for herself. At that moment, Chi arrived carrying their food and happily greeted everyone. Rika immediately thought Chi was adorable. Then, while looking around the nearly empty restaurant, Rika suddenly suggested an idea to Mao. If business was struggling so badly, why not hand out flyers outside and attract people directly? Mao immediately loved the suggestion. He and the staff rushed outside and began distributing flyers throughout the streets. Unfortunately, the plan failed completely. Not giving up, Mao tried another strategy by offering free burger samples to pedestrians. Somehow, that failed too. Just when things seemed hopeless, Mao came up with one final idea. He decided to place a giant Christmas tree outside the restaurant entrance to create a festive atmosphere and draw attention from the crowds. And surprisingly, it actually worked. Little by little, customers finally started returning, and before long, the restaurant was crowded once again. Over time, the restaurant's sales returned to normal. While working, Mao was lost in thought. Suddenly, his manager appeared behind him, startling him. She reassured him and informed him that he needed to prepare, because he would be sent to the Fukushima branch. Mao was shocked and asked why, especially since they had already met their monthly target, as usual. The manager explained that the manager of the Fukushima branch had requested to borrow her best employee to help during their peak period. Since Mao was her top employee, she had recommended him. Mao felt relieved. The manager also informed him that his transportation expenses would be covered by the restaurant. Excited, Mao immediately agreed. Chi, overhearing this, wanted to go with him. However, the manager declined, saying that only Mao was needed. That evening, Mao returned home and told Ashia that he would be going to Fukushima for work tomorrow. They sat down for dinner. Mao was surprised by how much Ashia was eating, considering he was supposed to be sick. Ashia explained that if they didn't finish all the food that night, it would expire, so he had to eat it all. He also reassured Mao that he was feeling better. At that moment, Lucifer mentioned that a new haunted house attraction was opening tomorrow at Fukushima Park. Additionally, there would also be a grand reptile exhibit opening at the same time. Lucifer explained that they had to go to the haunted house to absorb magical energy by feeding off people's fear. Ashia immediately decided to go with Mao to Fukushima the next day. Meanwhile, Chi called Amy and invited her to the grand reptile exhibit. Amy agreed since she was free all day. Chi was thrilled that Amy accepted and thanked her. They planned to meet up at the park. Shortly after, Suzuno called Emi. She informed Imai that Mao was planning to gather magic from the haunted house and the reptile park in Fukushima. Imai responded that she had already heard that Mao was going there to help out at another restaurant branch. Suzuno was surprised that Emi already knew this. Emi explained that she had found out from Chi and that they would be going there tomorrow as well. Emi then asked how Mao planned to gather magic from an amusement park. Suzuno sighed and said, "You're as dumb as ever. I'll explain when I see you." She then decided to join them at the park. The next morning, Mao arrived at the new restaurant branch. He introduced himself to the staff and the manager. The branch manager told him that Kisaki, his own manager, had spoken very highly of him. She informed him that today would be extremely busy, so everyone had to give their best effort. Meanwhile, Chi was waiting for Emi at the park. Emi and Suzuno arrived soon after. Emi apologized for being late. They then changed into swimsuits and headed out to enjoy the attractions. Back at the restaurant, Mao performed his job flawlessly. The manager was very impressed with his skills. At that moment, he was shocked to see Chi approaching the restaurant. She greeted him and ordered 3 large hamburgers. While waiting for her order, they chatted for a bit. Then, to Mao's surprise, Amy and Suzuno joined Chi. Mao immediately asked Amy, "What are you doing here?" Amy crossed her arms and immediately defended herself, insisting that since she worked hard all week, she had every right to spend her day off however she wanted. Suzuno added that she was simply there to study human society, because this world was still unfamiliar to her. Mao looked at both of them suspiciously before pretending to accept their excuses with a sarcastic sure. Meanwhile, back at the apartment, Ashia was suffering badly from stomach pain. Lucifer casually pointed out that Mao warned him not to survive entirely on instant noodles, and now he was paying the price for it. He suggested taking medicine, but Ashia stubbornly insisted it was just a minor stomachache. Seconds later, the pain became unbearable, and he immediately ran to the bathroom. Feeling miserable, Ashia complained that he couldn't even help Mao gather magical energy like they originally planned. Surprisingly, Lucifer tried comforting him and told him to focus on recovering first instead of pushing himself. Back at the amusement park, Emi, Chi and Suzuno sat together eating, while admiring how crowded the place had become. Chi explained that the park had recently opened several new attractions, which was why so many visitors were there. Suzuno immediately became interested after hearing about the haunted house attraction. The moment Chi mentioned people were calling it terrifying, Suzuno eagerly agreed they should check it out. The 3 entered the haunted house together. Inside, the atmosphere was dark, quiet, and genuinely unsettling. Chi quickly became nervous, while Emi and Suzuno initially stayed calm. But the deeper they walked, the stranger things became. The lights flickered constantly, weird sounds echoed through the halls, and even Chi's fear started affecting the others. Eventually, Imai decided to move deeper inside to investigate properly, despite Chi clearly wanting to leave already. Then suddenly, Chi looked toward a nearby window and saw a severed head hanging there staring directly at them. She completely lost it. Screaming in terror, she sprinted away faster than both Emi and Suzuno combined, abandoning them inside the haunted house. Now separated, Emi and Suzuno wandered deeper into the attraction searching for her. The atmosphere only became creepier the farther they went. To Emi's horror, even she started feeling scared. A hero who fought demons and monsters across another world was getting terrified inside a haunted house. Eventually, they encountered a little girl standing alone in the middle of the path, quietly crying. Suzuno gently approached and asked what was wrong, but the girl kept repeating the same eerie sentence over and over again. "My mom left me and walked away." Suzuno offered to help her, but the child continued repeating the exact same line without reacting normally at all. Both Emi and Suzuno immediately sensed something was deeply wrong. Then suddenly, the girl's head twisted completely around. Her lifeless eyes locked onto them. She was a ghost. At the exact same moment, another ghost appeared above them, causing both Emi and Suzuno to completely panic. The two immediately screamed and ran for their lives. Later, outside the haunted house, the three girls sat exhausted on a park bench trying to recover mentally from what they had just experienced. None of them could believe something that terrifying existed in this world. After calming down a little, they decided to visit the Grand Reptile exhibit next. Ironically, they were somehow nervous about entering that too after the haunted house disaster. Emi asked Chi if she was really okay going inside, and Chi nervously agreed. Suzuno then smirked and teased Emi, asking whether she was secretly scared and simply using Chai as an excuse. Emi instantly denied it, loudly insisting that the hero of all people couldn't possibly be afraid. She just disliked reptiles apparently. Inside the reptile exhibit, they admired all kinds of rare creatures, including massive crocodiles and exotic reptiles from around the world. Meanwhile, Mao continued working non-stop at the restaurant and eventually left to deliver food to the circus staff nearby. While the workers were distracted eating, one of the monkeys escaped from its enclosure. To make matters worse, the monkey wandered directly into the reptile exhibit after finding the zookeeper's dropped keys nearby. Back inside the exhibit, Emi, Suzuno, and Chi suddenly noticed the escaped monkey wandering around alone. Feeling bad for it, they decided to catch it and return it safely before anyone noticed. At the same time, Mao finished delivering the food and saw the circus workers desperately searching everywhere in panic. When he asked what happened, they explained that one of their monkeys escaped. Mao was already surprised enough by that, until he learned the monkey apparently had the exact same name as him. The circus workers quickly spread throughout the amusement park searching for the escaped monkey. Meanwhile, at the lost and found area, Emi, Suzuno, and Chi were preparing to hand the monkey over to the staff. But before they could do anything, the monkey suddenly heard its owner calling nearby. Without hesitation, it leaped off Chi's shoulder and ran straight toward him. At that exact moment, Mao arrived alongside the monkey's owner. The man thanked the girls for helping recover the animal, and everything seemed peaceful again. Until disaster struck. During all the chaos, the monkey had accidentally unlocked the crocodile enclosures, and now the crocodiles were loose. At the same time, Emi, Suzuno, and Chi had moved to the park's pool area and were relaxing in the water, completely unaware that several crocodiles were already swimming beneath them. Nobody noticed at first. Then suddenly, one crocodile brushed against a girl swimming nearby. She turned around, saw the massive reptile behind her, and let out a horrifying scream. Instant panic exploded across the entire pool. People rushed out of the water in terror, while the crocodiles began chasing visitors throughout the park. Emergency evacuation alarms immediately sounded everywhere. In the middle of the chaos, she got knocked down by the crowd and fell hard onto the ground. Emi quickly helped her back up while trying to keep everyone calm. Then Mao arrived. Without hesitation, he stepped directly in front of the rampaging crocodiles and used his magic to control them all at once. Instantly, the creatures calmed down under his command, and the entire crisis ended before anyone was hurt. Emi, Chi, and Suzuno could only stare in shock at the overwhelming control Mao displayed. But while the others felt relieved, Suzuno felt disturbed. Watching Mao calmly save people made her question everything she believed about the Dark Lord. During the panic, he could have easily used everyone's fear to gather enormous magical energy for himself. Yet instead, he used his power to stop the disaster. Suzuno couldn't understand it anymore. What exactly had happened to the Demon King Satan? Later that evening, Mao finished his shift at the restaurant, where the manager praised him for handling the emergency so well. Mao thanked her modestly before meeting up with Emi, Chi, and Suzuno outside to say goodbye for the night. Since he still needed to stay behind and finish cleaning, the others headed home first using the subway. When they arrived at their station, Suzuno separated from the group and walked alone toward her apartment. But suddenly, a mysterious figure appeared in front of her. The man radiated powerful magical energy. He was definitely from Asila. Without saying a word, he spread massive wings behind him. Suzuno froze in shock. But the moment she looked away for even a second, the figure vanished completely. The next morning, Mao sat down for breakfast while Lucifer casually asked whether he managed to gather any magical energy during the amusement park incident. Mao admitted that he actually collected a huge amount, but immediately used it all up afterward. Meanwhile, Ashia was still horribly sick and kept running back and forth to the bathroom every few minutes. Then suddenly, the doorbell rang. A package had arrived for Lucifer. The moment he realized it was his delivery, Lucifer desperately tried to reach the door first, because he didn't want Ashia discovering he bought more unnecessary things online. Unfortunately, the second he stood up, his legs completely gave out from sitting at the computer too long, and he collapsed instantly. As a result, Mao ended up receiving the package instead. Even while half dead from stomach pain, Ashia immediately became suspicious and demanded to know when Lucifer bought something without permission. But before Lucifer could answer, Ashia's stomach acted up again, forcing him to sprint back to the bathroom while Lucifer escaped the interrogation entirely. Ashia spent the entire day suffering from stomach pain and eventually apologized to Mao for not even being able to cook dinner that night. Mao told him not to worry and decided to handle dinner himself. But when he opened the fridge, he realized they had almost nothing left except rice. With no other options, he prepared a simple meal of rice and fried eggs. Right then, the doorbell rang again. Ashia immediately yelled at Lucifer, convinced he had ordered more useless junk online. Lucifer quickly defended himself, insisting the package wasn't his this time, because his own deliveries always arrived much earlier. Mao went to answer the door and discovered that the shipment was actually from their landlady. Alongside the delivery was another strange letter from her, explaining that she found all kinds of interesting treasures while traveling in Hawaii. The moment Mao looked around the apartment, he realized the situation was insane. The entire house was now overflowing with boxes. Their landlady had apparently sent them mountains of random goods and expected them to sell everything at the upcoming neighborhood summer bazaar. Meanwhile, Suzuno remained deeply distracted by the mysterious winged man she encountered earlier. It was revealed that she had secretly met him again, and during their conversation, he immediately recognized her true identity. "You're from the church," he said. "You're Bell the Executioner, aren't you?" The story then shifted to Suzuno's past in Asila. Rumors had spread throughout a town that a local shopkeeper and several rebels had mysteriously vanished after openly opposing the church. At the same time, a cloaked Suzuno quietly walked through the streets listening to people discuss the disappearances. The truth was far darker. Suzuno herself had assassinated the man and eliminated his entire rebel group under orders from the church. It was finally revealed that Suzuno wasn't just an investigator. She was an inquisitor, an executioner working directly for the church. After completing the mission, she returned to her superior, who calmly praised her work and handed her a cloth to wipe the blood from her hands. Then he assigned her a new mission, the mission that eventually brought her to Japan. Back in the present, Suzuno silently stared at the mission document again, clearly troubled by something. Elsewhere, Imi casually mentioned to Rika at work that she visited Fukushima Park the previous day. Naturally, Rika immediately asked who she went with. Imi admitted she was there with Suzuno and Chie, and that they also ran into Mao while he was working. The next morning, Chi visited Mao's apartment and nearly got buried alive the moment the door opened. The apartment was so packed with boxes that she could barely squeeze inside. Mao explained the entire situation with the summer bazaar, and how their landlady expected them to sell all this random merchandise. Since Ashia was still too sick to move properly, Mao asked Chai to help organize everything. Suddenly, Lucifer casually announced that Imai had entered the building. Mao looked confused and asked how he could possibly know that. With complete confidence, Lucifer admitted that he secretly attached a tracking device to Ima the last time she visited. Mao was horrified. He immediately screamed that Imi would absolutely murder him if she discovered she was being tracked. Panicking, Mao rushed toward the door while yelling at Lucifer, only to realize Imi wasn't actually coming to their apartment. She was standing outside Suzuno's room instead. Later, everyone gathered together at Mao's apartment to prepare for the bazaar. Mao asked Emi and Suzuno to help organize the goods while Lucifer attempted to escape responsibility by claiming he technically wasn't allowed outside the apartment anyway. Mao grabbed him by the collar and dragged him back to work immediately. As they sorted through the boxes, they discovered huge amounts of snacks, drinks, and random food products. Another note from the landlady informed them they could keep all the food and beverages for themselves. They eventually decided to try some of the drinks together, but Chi suddenly noticed there were only 5 cups prepared. Mao casually shrugged and declared that Lucifer didn't need one anyway. Throughout the evening, Suzuno remained unusually quiet and distracted after her encounter with the mysterious man. By nighttime, the group finally finished setting up everything for the summer bazaar. Mao thanked everyone sincerely for helping him. Chai happily replied that she actually enjoyed the experience because it reminded her of preparing for school festivals. Even Imai admitted she liked festivals too, especially the excitement of preparing for them beforehand. But both Mao and Chi couldn't help noticing something strange. Suzuno had barely spoken the entire evening. Chi noticed how quiet Suzuno had become and gently asked if she was alright. Suzuno smiled faintly and replied that she was fine. She had simply been thinking about how many years had passed since she last enjoyed something as peaceful as a festival. Soon afterward, everyone said their goodbyes, and Mao headed off to work like usual. But the moment he left, a white feather drifted down in front of Suzuno. She instantly recognized it. It was a summons from the mysterious man connected to the church. Suzuno quietly followed the signal and met him in secret. The man immediately scolded her for wasting time preparing for festivals and living peacefully while forgetting her true mission. Her purpose was simple: kill the Dark Lord before he regained his full power. The man demanded to know why she was hesitating now when she had previously slaughtered countless people without hesitation under the church's orders. As he spoke, Suzuno remembered the bloody missions she carried out as an inquisitor. It became painfully clear that her true mission in Japan had always been to assassinate Mao. Not long afterward, Imi and Chi found Suzuno standing alone looking troubled and asked what was wrong. Suzuno finally looked directly at Imi and declared that she had to kill Mao, the Dark Lord. Chi was stunned hearing that Suzuno also knew Mao's true identity. An argument immediately broke out between them over whether Mao deserved to die or not. But in the end, Imi stopped the conversation herself. She admitted that the world was peaceful now and Mao hadn't done anything evil since arriving in Japan. Because of that, she refused to attack him. Hearing Imi say that, Suzuno silently walked away. Then suddenly, the mysterious churchman appeared and launched an attack. Imi instantly reacted, protecting Chai while dodging the assault. But the moment she saw the attacker clearly, she froze in shock. It was the manager of the rival restaurant across from Mao's workplace. The man continued attacking relentlessly while Emi struggled to avoid his magic. Chi quickly pulled out her phone and desperately called Mao for help. During the fight, the attacker suddenly used a strange ability that completely neutralized Emi's sacred sword. Shocked, Emi demanded to know how he disabled her power. The man explained that he was using suppression magic specifically designed to seal holy abilities like hers. He revealed that he came to Japan for one reason, only to eliminate the hero Amelia. Then he finally revealed his true form. Before Emi could react properly, he struck her with a devastating attack that left her seriously injured. Nearby, Chi noticed Suzuno still standing there watching everything unfold. Desperate, she asked whether Suzuno was on their side, or if she intended to follow the same path as Orba the church traitor. Suzuno hesitated. Then, with a pained expression, she knocked Chi unconscious and quietly apologized to her. Meanwhile, Mao suddenly noticed multiple missed calls from Chi. Almost immediately afterward, Chi's mother called him as well, thanking him for always looking after her daughter before asking whether he knew where Chi was because she still hadn't returned home. Mao's expression instantly changed. He quickly contacted Lucifer and asked if Chi had gone back to the apartment, but Lucifer confirmed she wasn't there. Then Lucifer revealed something even more disturbing. After investigating the rival restaurant manager, he discovered the man didn't even exist in the employee database. Someone had deliberately tampered with the records. Mao immediately realized something was terribly wrong. He ordered Lucifer to use the tracker and send Emi's current location immediately. Lucifer explained that Emi's signal was moving strangely, almost as if she was traveling across rooftops in a perfectly straight line towards City Hall. The moment he heard that, Mao rushed out without hesitation to save Emi and Chi. And elsewhere, inside a hospital room, Orba suddenly opened his eyes. While all of this was happening, Ashia ended up hospitalized because of his terrible stomach condition. Even while lying in a hospital bed hooked to an IV, he was more worried about the medical bill than his own health. When a nurse came to check on him, Ashia immediately asked whether his insurance would cover the treatment costs. The nurse reassured him that he wouldn't need to pay anything and casually mentioned she would prepare another IV drip for him. The moment he heard that, Ashia instantly jumped out of bed claiming he was suddenly perfectly healthy. But as he walked through the hospital hallway, he noticed something strange. A police officer was lying unconscious on the floor. Confused, Ashia turned around, only for Orba to suddenly appear and slam him violently into the wall. After knocking him out, Orba stole Ashia's identification and quietly disappeared. Meanwhile, Mao raced through the streets on his bicycle, desperately trying to reach Emi and Chi. Back at the rooftop, the church agent had suspended Emi in midair using magic while repeatedly blasting her with painful attacks. Suzuno stood nearby in silence while Chi remained unconscious beside them. The man demanded that Emi hand over her sacred sword, threatening to continue torturing her until she obeyed. Through the pain, Emi explained that the sword refused to manifest itself. According to her, the holy weapon was rejecting him completely, which was why he couldn't force it out. Then she begged him to leave Chi out of this because she had nothing to do with their conflict. But the man revealed something horrifying. Chi was actually useful to them. Since she knew the true identity of the Dark Lord, they intended to use her as part of experiments studying how ordinary human bodies reacted to demonic power. After saying that, he continued torturing Emi even more brutally. By then, Mao had nearly arrived at the rooftop, but the church agent had already placed a magical barrier around the area to stop anyone from interfering. Then the man ordered Suzuno to kill Mao herself. Without hesitation, Suzuno attacked. Mao desperately avoided her strikes, completely confused and hurt that she was trying to kill him. He demanded to know why she was doing this, but Suzuno continued attacking until she finally landed a direct hit and sent him crashing backward. But then she suddenly stopped. She realized something strange. Mao wasn't fighting back at all. Instead, he calmly looked at her and asked whether she actually intended to kill him or not. Then he added that she was waiting for him, so unless Suzuno planned on finishing him immediately, she needed to get out of his way. Finally, Mao demanded to know who the enemy really was. Suzuno explained that the attacker belonged to the church, and that his powers grew stronger the closer he was to the moon. The moment Mao heard that, he immediately rushed toward the rooftop again. At the same time, Orba arrived at Mao's apartment and knocked on the door. Lucifer casually opened it expecting Ashia, only to freeze in shock after seeing Orba standing there alive. Orba calmly reminded Lucifer about the agreement they once made together. Meanwhile, back on the rooftop, the church agent continued tormenting Imai while mocking her for still holding onto the sacred sword, despite everything she suffered. Then he stepped closer and declared that if the sword refused to appear willingly, he would simply rip it out of her body himself. Right before he could touch her, she suddenly regained consciousness and immediately yelled at him, calling him a disgusting creep. Even while injured, Imi joined in and started insulting him too. Annoyed, the man released a burst of magic to silence them through fear. But Imi defiantly warned him that if he hurt Chi, he would regret it forever. The man laughed mockingly and asked what Imi could possibly do in her condition. Imi smirked painfully and answered that she wouldn't be the one punishing him. The Dark Lord would. The church agent burst into laughter after hearing the hero place her faith in the Demon King. But Imi confidently explained that she worked under Mao at the restaurant, and as acting manager, Mao took responsibility for protecting his employees seriously. The man mocked the idea that the Dark Lord could possibly care that much about a part-time worker. Then suddenly, Mao finally appeared on the rooftop. Breathing heavily from exhaustion, he immediately checked on Imi and Chi first, relieved to see they were still alive. The church agent looked genuinely surprised that Mao actually came to rescue them. Mao glared back and insulted him in return, saying he never expected the pathetic short manager from the rival restaurant to secretly be a church assassin. Then Mao angrily shouted that terrifying Chi was unforgivable, because she was one of his employees and protecting his staff was his responsibility. The church agent laughed at the absurdity of hearing something like that from the Dark Lord himself. Then, with just a flick of his finger, he blasted Mao across the rooftop. A relentless barrage of magical attacks followed, tossing Mao around like he was powerless. Elsewhere, Orba stood atop a building drinking magical potions to restore his strength. After recovering enough power, he activated an enormous magic circle over the city. Suzuno immediately sensed something was wrong. At that moment, Lucifer suddenly appeared beside her and calmly explained what Orba was planning. The explosion would spread panic throughout the entire city, and panic created magical energy. Then Orba used his magic to pull the moon unnaturally close to Earth, making it appear gigantic in the night sky. The church agent looked up at the massive moon and smiled in excitement as his magical power surged dramatically. As Mao tried to fight back, the church agent used his magic to bind him with massive stone restraints before launching him high into the air like he was nothing. Confident in his overwhelming power, the agent sneered and declared that nobody could stop him anymore. Below them, panic spread throughout the city as people stared in terror at the gigantic moon hanging unnaturally close above Tokyo. Fear flooded everywhere, and with that fear, magical energy exploded across the city. At that exact moment, Ashiya suddenly regained consciousness. The surge of magic instantly restored his true demonic form. Back on the rooftop, Mao's body became surrounded by an overwhelming aura of dark magic. The church agent stared in shock, unable to understand what was happening. Meanwhile, Ami and Chi immediately realized the truth. The fear spreading across the city had restored the Dark Lord's full power. For the first time in a long while, Mao had completely returned to his true form, but the sheer pressure of his magic was so immense that she collapsed instantly from the strain. Suzuno quickly used her own abilities to stabilize her condition while shouting at Mao to control his power, before he accidentally killed her. Realizing what he was doing, Mao immediately restrained his aura and apologized. Then he freed Imi from her restraints and ordered Suzuno to protect both Imi and Chai while he handled the enemy himself. Elsewhere, Orba and Lucifer watched everything unfold from a distance. Lucifer suddenly asked Orba for Emi's bag. Confused, Orba handed it over and questioned why he even wanted it. Lucifer casually replied that he planned to return it to Emi later, otherwise she would probably kill him. Only then did Orba realize Lucifer had tricked him. Enraged, Orba attacked immediately, but Lucifer moved faster and struck him down effortlessly before he could react. The instant Orba fell, the moon suddenly returned to normal. Seeing this, the church agent froze in horror. Mao calmly looked at him and gave him two choices: either run away like a coward, or stay and fight properly. Still blinded by arrogance, the agent chose to fight. A brutal clash erupted between them, but this time the difference in power was absolute. Mao completely dominated him. Growing desperate, the church agent attempted to seize Chi and use her as a hostage. But the moment he grabbed her, he realized too late that it wasn't actually Chi at all. Mao had disguised himself using magic. In the next instant, Mao delivered a devastating attack, drew his blade, and finished the battle once and for all. Afterward, Mao looked relieved to finally have his power restored again. But almost immediately, he let out an exhausted sigh. Now he would have to waste all that magic repairing the damage done to the city again. Right then, Ashiya finally arrived wearing his true form after returning home to retrieve their cloaks first. But instead of celebrating, Mao suddenly panicked over something far more important. He had left his work uniform behind, and he was already late for his shift at the restaurant. The following evening, Chi visited Mao at the restaurant and told him about a strange dream she had. In the dream, Mao said goodbye to everyone and returned to Enti Isla forever. Mao immediately dismissed the idea, explaining that returning was impossible now. After restoring the city the previous night, he had completely drained his remaining magical power and no longer had enough energy to open a portal back home. Right then, the manager suddenly appeared and demanded to know why Mao abandoned work yesterday, while running off with a broom in his hands. Before Mao could explain himself, Suzuno stepped in and calmly described everything that happened the night before, including the dangerous attack and how Mao rushed to save everyone. At the same time, Lucifer was secretly monitoring Suzuno again and informed Ashiya that she had gone to visit Mao's workplace. Ashiya immediately scolded him, saying it was wrong to keep spying on Amy and Suzuno all the time. Back at the restaurant, Suzuno formally introduced herself to the manager and explained that she and Chi had been attacked by a dangerous man while returning home. According to her story, Mao heroically charged in to rescue them. Chi backed up the entire story. The manager stared at Mao in shock and asked if he seriously fought off a dangerous criminal using nothing but a mop. Mao proudly confirmed that the man was indeed extremely dangerous. But before the conversation could continue, another employee suddenly rushed in screaming that there was a frozen man inside the restaurant freezer. Chai and Suzuno immediately recognized him. It was the mysterious church agent Mao defeated the previous night. As the frozen man slowly regained consciousness, the manager nervously asked if he was alright. Unsurprisingly, the man continued acting bizarrely, completely confusing everyone around him. When the manager asked Mao who this strange person even was, Mao casually replied that he worked at the rival restaurant nearby. The next morning, Imai had a disturbing dream. In it, Mao regained his full powers and completely conquered Japan, eventually taking over the entire modern world as the Dark Lord once again. Later at work, Rika invited Emi out for dinner after their shift, but Emi apologized and said she was busy again. Rika instantly guessed the truth and asked if Emi planned on spying on Mao again. Emi admitted it without hesitation, insisting she still needed to monitor the Dark Lord carefully. Rika then quietly asked when Emi planned to finally stop chasing after him. Emi paused for a moment before answering that she could never stop. Then she awkwardly brushed the topic aside, claiming it was complicated. That evening, while walking home, Emi reminded herself why she couldn't forgive Mao no matter how much he changed. He destroyed her village. He killed her father. As the hero, it was her responsibility to keep watching him forever and eliminate him the moment he stepped out of line. But when she arrived at Mao's apartment, the scene waiting for her completely caught her off guard. Suzuno was personally feeding Mao food while Chi happily prepared more dishes nearby. Completely confused, Emi demanded to know what was going on. Suzuno calmly explained that she had been practicing French cuisine and wanted Mao to taste test the food. Moments later, Chai and Suzuno started arguing over which one of them would prepare dinner for Mao that night. Then Ashiya suddenly entered the room and unexpectedly requested time off from Mao. Later that night, Emi contacted Emeralda and informed her that Ashiya had taken leave from work and seemed to be preparing for a trip back to Enti Isla. The next morning, Emi resumed spying on Mao's apartment like usual and noticed something suspicious. Mao and Ashiya were carrying huge stacks of boxes despite clearly not having enough money to buy so much stuff. Emi immediately grew suspicious. Worried they might be secretly purchasing magical items or potions to restore their power similar to the ones Emeralda sent her, she quickly called Emeralda and explained the situation. Emeralda agreed that it sounded suspicious and promised to have Albert investigate immediately. The following day, Mao approached the restaurant manager with an unusual request. For the first time ever, he asked if she could adjust his work schedule. The manager looked genuinely surprised since Mao almost never requested favors, but he explained that he had something extremely important to take care of. Without hesitation, she agreed and told him she would rearrange the schedule however he needed. Then she smiled and asked which hours he wanted changed. While Mao discussed his schedule change with the manager, Chi secretly listened nearby and looked noticeably upset by the conversation. That evening, Mao finished work earlier than usual and headed home through the pouring rain. Suddenly, Chi ran after him and directly asked whether he was planning to return to Ent Isla. She also demanded to know why he had been leaving work so suddenly lately. Mao calmly reassured her that returning to Enti Isla was impossible because he no longer had enough magical power. He reminded her that he already explained this before. But she still wanted to know the real reason he left work early. Mao apologized and admitted there was something important going on, but he couldn't explain it yet. The next morning, Mao left the apartment as usual, unaware that Emi was secretly following him again. This time, Chi joined her. Emi insisted they needed to figure out what Mao was hiding, so the two quietly followed him through the city, until he eventually arrived at a construction site. Seeing the location immediately made Emi suspicious. She started imagining that Mao might secretly be building a new headquarters for himself. Chi quickly shut the theory down, pointing out that Mao and Ashiya barely had enough money to survive, let alone build an evil fortress. As they continued spying, Mao suddenly turned around and spotted them instantly. he casually called out and asked what the two of them were doing hiding there. Then, surprisingly, he offered them food and explained the real reason he took on extra work recently. They desperately needed more money because the tracking devices they bought were incredibly expensive. Emi immediately froze. Tracking devices, she repeated. Mao casually revealed that Lucifer had secretly purchased them and placed one inside Ami's bag and another inside Suzuno's shoe. The moment she heard that, Ama exploded in anger. She frantically searched through her bag, found the tracker, and crushed it immediately. Still suspicious, Emi demanded to know why Mao kept all of this hidden if it was supposedly harmless. Mao explained that he simply didn't want them getting dragged into unnecessary problems or feeling responsible for everything. He apologized for worrying them and admitted he should have told them sooner. Hearing that, Chi looked genuinely relieved and happily admitted she was glad Mao wasn't secretly preparing to leave for Ent Isla after all. But Emi still had one more question. What about all the huge boxes they kept bringing home lately? The second she mentioned the boxes, Mao's expression instantly changed. Panicking, he rushed back to the apartment and immediately started interrogating Lucifer about them. Lucifer innocently claimed it was the first time he had ever seen those boxes and pretended to know absolutely nothing. Mao obviously didn't believe a single word. The moment he opened the packages, he discovered they were completely filled with games, entertainment devices, and other useless things Lucifer secretly ordered online. Realizing Lucifer wasted an absurd amount of money on nonsense again, Mao finally lost his patience and punched him immediately.